been out to sea for most of my life, and I've seen a lot happen in the 35 years I've been charter fishing. Before that, I was a sword fisherman for 20 years of my life, and 98% of my living I make on the water. And wow, the ecosystem is definitely changing.
Well, I've certainly been hearing about those symptoms of climate change. While we were in high school and then again in college, the sound froze. Standing on State Beach, and you just saw ice as far as you could see. And people could walk to Chappaquiddick. And that's happened a few times in history, but it hasn't happened lately.
Some of the big changes we've seen are like, yeah, it's January 12th, and we could be in shorts and a t-shirt. It's gonna be 60 degrees tomorrow. That's not normal. You know, some years you've seen the lagoon where it's got this nasty carpet of seaweed on it, and that's because of warming oceans and bad circulation. That never used to happen, and Senja used to never stink, and now it does.
Even in my short time here, I definitely have a sense that the climate is changing. It's becoming much less predictable. I feel like when I first started farming, you could expect a little more of a rhythm and a pattern that had existed in the past. And now you just don't know.
My observation is that over the last 5 years, I feel like there have been some pretty extreme events. There was a couple years where we didn't get frost until November, and that had never happened on my farm before. We always had a frost. If we didn't have it by the 7th of October, we'd had it by the 15th or 20th.
It's unbelievable how bad the storms have gotten. We never had hurricane force northeasters until a couple of years ago. It's pretty dramatic.
Normal surface water was about 8.2 in terms of pH. Now it's 8.1. It doesn't seem like a lot, but when you have something that's in a perfect balance, that's taking in CO2, when you're putting too much carbon into the water, it throws off the balance, and that 0.1, that 0.2 really makes a difference. The oceans are 30% more acidic now than they were when the Industrial Revolution began. The oysters can't grow shell, and they're actually dissolving in the water because of the acidity. You talk to some of these bigger oyster farmers, they see a train coming right at them, and it's headed for their business, and that's what the climate change worry is.
With all the factories and the cars and all the emissions going up into the atmosphere, it puts all that carbon stuff into the water, and it's really hurting the benthic animals that live down there, and they're not growing the shells as hard as they should be, and it's sad to see stuff deteriorating as quickly as it is. So people just have to realize that something's got to be done now, not later, now.
There are a lot of ways to at least try to fend off, or minimize, the effects of, I think, of climate change.
I think we have to change our perspective of what agriculture and what growing looks like and appreciate it. I think more and more growers are starting to move undercover. So now we are looking at putting up we have 2 more hoop houses planned for the future, which is interesting. We've had one of my neighbors is on the Land Bank Commission. He was voicing a little bit of concern about the visual impact from the road. My feeling is, if we're going to continue growing in the future with climate change and unpredictable weather patterns, those aren't always the most aesthetically beautiful structures. I think the image of a pastoral field with some sheep in a barn is sort of outdated and antiquated at this point.
When we're growing oysters and seaweed, there's no fertilizer inputs, there's no fresh water, so it's the most sustainable form of protein farming on the planet. Growing seaweeds as macroalgae, you can convert that to biodiesel fuels. We're always trying to better the environment, everything that we do. So all of the mooring blocks that we put down have little critter homes in them, critter caves, and that allows lobsters and baby fish and things like that to have a place to live. So we're trying to engineer an ecosystem that can benefit not only what we're growing, but also the natural environment.
We have started to move our fields into no-till production. No-till helps with a lot of things. It builds your soil, but it's also, you're gonna have better water retention for your crops during these long dry spells. So I'm excited to explore that.
So what happens is when you till soil, you basically are oxidizing the soil. You're putting a lot of oxygen into the soil. It's fueling the bacterial decomposition. And during that decomposition process, the bacteria consumes the carbon in the soil and spins it off as CO2. What you really want is a more balanced system where you're not bacterially dominated, but you're actually fungally dominated. The relationship between the fungus and the fungal biology and the bacterial biology is really important, and when you till, you push it all towards a bacterial-driven system, and there are a whole host of benefits to having fungi in your soil.
I have hope for the island because I think that farmers here are particularly in tune with and wanting to develop practices that are good for the environment. I feel positive about it because I have the power to change the way that I'm growing, and I think if we can figure out ways to farm with nature rather than against nature, I think I have a lot of hope.
Well, regenerative farming is really about rebuilding soil carbon that has been lost through agricultural practices that were not favoring healthy soil biology. It's really about restoring the health of the land while producing crops at the same time. You can do both. You can rebuild your land and you can produce a living and healthy food at the same time. This is the most exciting thing I've done in my career. One of my biggest hopes for this movement is that we can connect people, not just farmers, back to the land, but people that are eating the food really back to the land. If we can do that, we have hope in changing how we treat the earth.
It's smarter choices in what you're eating. It's knowing choices you're making are affecting the environment around you. It's that simple. Just think about your actions and what you do. Eat oysters, eat seaweed, just make smarter choices.
When I got to be sort of 7 or 8 years old, I used to fish down right below the shop here, and it was some of the best bass fishing from the shore on the East Coast. I used to put my fishing rod in my tackle box on my bicycle and ride up here and go catch 15 or 20 fish after school. It was great growing up here. It was just a paradise for kids here. Yes, I hope that there's some sort of a solution so that my grandchildren can have as much fishing as I had when I was growing up. That's just, if that could happen, that would be a miracle.
I was walking with my granddaughter Clara in Chilmark, where I used to go fishing as a kid, and I had walked down to the stream and back with her, and just the idea that she could walk the same land that I did, there's something right about being able to continue doing something, because that's sustainability.